Well, good morning, you magnificent children of God. So share it with each other. Good morning, you magnificent child of God. Good morning, you magnificent child of God. All right. Well, I'm a little surprised to see everybody here. Did that warning thing. And I've compassion for any guests that didn't get the warning. The experience that we're in is one in which we are bringing up questions about much of the traditional perception of Jesus, the Jesus story, and so forth. And that's not comfortable to everyone. And yet, it comes times when we need to do that, because we need to understand that asking questions is a part of the spiritual path, and respecting the intelligence and wisdom within ourselves is also a part of that path. So, last Sunday we looked at the Jesus story and acknowledged some of the differences that were there in terms of what people who have done wonderful research on that have brought to us, and brought much of it into question. And knowing that the value is in the question, because the truth is, I don't know what happened or not. And when we begin to question, we begin to look at the God thought that's underneath some of the things that are shared, and realizing that as we grow as spiritual beings, our God thought grows and changes. And so we begin to understand life in different ways. Now, one of the things that I shared last Sunday was that regardless of how you see the story around Jesus, miracles, and other things, if we take it away and look underneath it, what we find is the experience of a person. We're talking here about a person. We're talking about something out there that sends somebody down here. Okay, we're not going there. We're talking about a person who so impacted the people that were with him that they wanted to talk with him and describe the experience in terms of something that was divine. And in that language, of course, they went into and began to express it in the God thought of that time. But what happens is when we take that away and look at what's there, we begin to see the expression of a new God thought, of the indwelling presence of the divine. Not separate, but one with us as spiritual beings as we travel this road. Beautiful things that we get to touch. Again, regardless of where you look at the elements of the story, what's underneath it becomes of tremendous beauty and meaning in terms of our own lives. So that's the easy part, because we could go along with the academics to that point. Now, we go into the part that I assure you won't ever hear in a church before. So, what happens for me was when I look and say, okay, who was that guy that showed up there? I mean, that's a tremendous accomplishment, to step into this state of consciousness that out of that term is called the Christ, out of the Hindu, the Atman, on into the Buddha mind, the I am, many different ways that potential within us, a spiritual being that we are in its fullness, that we can touch and explore. So, what took him there? many pieces to that story, but in my own exploration, many years ago, when I was working with the Edgar Cayce readings, and for those that don't know, Edgar Cayce was probably the best known American psychic. Beautiful readings on a very eclectic view of spirituality. But I came across this set of readings that talked about prior incarnations of the soul that was Jesus. Prior incarnations. So within the concept of reincarnation, that soul was in the earth in different experiences before. Now, this isn't about reincarnation. Some of you know that I have what I perceive as memories of past life experience. I can explain them away better than you can. Okay, so again, let's stay open here. We aren't giving anybody answers, we're just asking questions. Okay, so again, whether or not, it's a fascinating perception to look at what that journey might have been for that soul. And there are some of those readings that it's clear to me Cayce is talking symbolically rather than in actuality. But there's one he kept going back to as a very real experience. And it brought up some interesting questions for me. He describes Jesus' prior incarnation as Joshua, the war leader of Israel. So you may or may not recall that segment of history, how, or story, whether or not it's history, the children of Israel leave Egypt where they were enslaved. They go into the desert, spend 40 years or more or less wandering around with Moses. And then they get to what they identify and they call their promised land. Okay, now they send over basically spies to take a look and see what's the situation over there. And most of them come back and say, oh, big guys, big swords. Don't go there. And they get two that say, oh, we can do it. God's with us, we can do it. Anyhow, one of those is Joshua. And eventually Moses gives his authority to Joshua as the leader. And then Joshua, with this group of people, enters this land and subdues it by military conquest. Now understand, it was bloody, it was genocide at times. They would go in and wipe out not only the soldiers, but all the men, women, and children left in the city. Okay, now, and in Joshua's story, it comes out that God told him to do that. Not my God. Interesting story. Now understand that in the story, we end up with the expression of it through the very primitive God thought of that time, which is God out there, okay, and kind of interfering, saying, okay, I like this group, I don't like that group, you're good, you're not, I'm on your side, and I'm going to wipe out the other guys. Okay? And so the direction that he receives in order to accept the authority and the power that he's experiencing, he shares as God's direction. Now, let's shift the God thought and move to that place where, as we understand that divine presence, it is within us. We are one with that, and there are many ways that it expresses within us. One of those is intelligence. The ability to take and bring the knowledge we have, bring that understanding and intelligence to meet and solve the questions before us. Well, his question was pretty simple. How am I going to make this safe for my people as opposed to those people? Separation higher than, lower than, safe, not safe. All of that was a part of the consciousness of that people at that time. And so in that intelligence, which let him do that successfully, he sees a divine hand, a divine guidance. And within our intelligence to meet the things in our lives, that intelligence expressing through us is that divine presence, but it's not necessarily at its highest. As I imagine most of us have proved at one time or another in our lives. It doesn't mean that we weren't going forward successfully with what was before us, but we have some real options. On the level of intelligence, the level of oneness, the level of spiritual wisdom that we bring. And genocide isn't one of those. But when we look at that story, we can understand why it's expressed that way. Now, the fascinating thing to me is, much later, that man walks through that countryside teaching peace, teaching forgiveness, teaching love, teaching non-resistance. So much so that when he experiences violence from another, he responds to violence with healing and forgiveness. That he affirms connection instead of separation, inclusion instead of superiority. And in that experience that he meets, there are some interesting parallels that happen. And I invite you to explore this as the possibility of the expression of karmic or cause and effect law, which is one of the ways that we meet what we have created and learn. And he experiences being derided in public, as Joshua did for some of the kings that he captured, being hung on a tree until dead, as Joshua did to some of the kings he captured, being taken down before sunset and placed in a cave, as Joshua did for some of the kings that he captured. Now, the whip appears different. In the Joshua story, I am unaware of a reference to that. However, my understanding of the Jesus story is that he went into the temple and cleared it out with a whip. Now, I hear a lot of people saying, well, he wouldn't have used it. I'm not sure. My experience of growing through our humanness is we got to take care of our anger, and we usually blow it a time or two before we get our hands on it. Is that a picture of karmic law? I don't know. But the interesting thing to me is not that it happened, but what was the response to it happening. There, in Jesus' teachings, he says he did not come to take away the law, that it would be fulfilled every jot and tittle. But he brings that consciousness of love, of grace. And it is that way in which he meets what was there. And that consciousness doesn't establish an earthly kingdom like Joshua did. Joshua won, controlled the territory and all its goods. Jesus didn't control the territory, any of its goods, but the impact of meeting what showed up in his life with love created a dynamic in consciousness that this world is still seeking to understand and work with. Is that how it happened? I don't know. And what I do know is when I look at that story, it tells me a possibility within myself that I can choose, that has meaning for what is unfolding in my life. So, we're back there. Now let's leave that gone. One of my questions has been, so what about today? So, well, you know, whether you want to do resurrection of the body or non-resurrection of the body, or you want to go this way or that way, you know, we know you don't get out of it when the body goes. Okay? So we all still got work to do. And so what of that soul as it's continued today? I've had so many experiences of being touched by people who in the challenges of their life made sincere effort to connect with Jesus and that support. And for many of them, they felt power, they felt healing. I know of a number of people who are standing in their world sober today because of that request, who are relating to their families in a different way, who moved beyond huge challenge because in that request they felt direct and powerful support. Beautiful, beautiful sacred experiences. And I know many people just as sincere, just as loving and caring, who asked for that response and did not get it. I don't think we're in a one-size-fits-all system, folks. As a result, I am so grateful for the beautiful variety of spiritual path and experience open to us. What a gift to walk through this world, particularly at this time when it's so close in here. I mean, we can sit and chant the Om and talk about Jesus in the same service. My goodness. What a beautiful, beautiful thing that there is variety in our paths. And that part of the assignment is not to do what someone tells you, but to find that way within your own heart to what has meaning and works for you. You're the only one whose spiritual growth you're responsible for. So your spouse can breathe easier. Now, I have a sense that Jesus has a compulsion to be an author, because I keep being aware that people are talking about books that Jesus is writing through them. Now, I've read a number of them and I'm not really convinced. And yet there's some that seem to have a a power, a consciousness that makes a difference. Many of you are students of the Course in Miracles. There's this implication in it that that's Jesus. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But it certainly has an impact that is beneficial and very meaningful to many people. Beautiful. So I ran across a different experience I want to share with you. I was the keynoter at a conference on the heart. So I show up and I'm doing my thing, and I was aware that the last afternoon there was going to be another lady who was going to be presenting there at this conference. So I looked her up, read some of her book before she went, and found it very interesting. Turns out that she was an artist, and she had received that inner direction to do a portrait of Jesus. Now, her realm of study had been early religious art. And so that would make sense. It wasn't something she wanted to do and felt comfortable with, but she felt kind of compelled to do it. And so she had this image that came into her mind on what this would be. So she got all ready and sat down to paint, but she really couldn't bring that image of Jesus out. And in the room where she was, Jesus materialized physically and was there with her many hours over many days. This is the picture that she ended up creating from that experience. Now, in that, they talked. And in those discussions, he answered many questions, and he shared things that he felt were valuable to her. And so after as the picture came out, part of the instruction was that she could share some of what he had shared with her. Now, interesting experience in what came from that. And on the question, was that Jesus actually manifesting physically? I met with her over lunch and we talked because I was curious. I've known people who have very creative imaginations. And the spiritual world seems to draw more than its fair share. But I sensed a very sincere person who had been deeply touched by something, and there was I had no sense that there was any sense of deception in her, that she was sharing genuinely what she experienced. But the meaningful thing to me was when I heard what was being shared. One of the things she said was that his focus was on oneness. She states, his understanding of everything was whole. He bore no witness to duality or opposition. And she quotes him, through the oneness of the Spirit, the universe is maintained in unity, and all of creation performs in an interlocking system of relationships where everything belongs and has its place. Spirit is the ultimate medium of communication, for it is indivisible. One presence, one power. He focused a great deal on love. He said the Creator is love, the source of love and the origin of your own beingness. In that image you were created. There is but one God which provides an enduring unity to all that is. What it means to be created in the image of God is that holy will pours through all mankind, generation after generation, by way of a common essence. The essence is love. The name of your Father is love, and so too is that your immortal name. Love is the essence of true beingness. Love is who you are. Love is who you are. Own it for a moment with me. I am love. I am love. I am love. I am love. Love is who you are. And then she focuses, or says that he focused a great deal on the heart. And she says, he explained that it was his gift and chosen task to come and restore the heart to its true power. Interesting thought. His gift and chosen task to come and restore the heart to its true power. She quotes him. When the heart is in its rightful place, the mind then can be truly of service. And ironically, it becomes both brilliant and blissful when in a right combination with the heart. The heart is the timeless and indestructible source of all higher knowledge. All higher knowledge. Not how to wipe out your enemies. The source of all higher knowledge. It is the one point within each person where the inner and outer forces are the same. Within the heart, the will of God and your own will be brought into harmony. The heart is the soul's gateway into life and beyond into eternity. An interesting perception. Now, when I look at what's there, what I see is a God thought that was tried to bring forth in that journey 2,000 years ago, and got caught up in people trying to share that years later with the understanding and the translators that they could get and use, and all that happening. And a pure God thought being shared to guide us at this time in this way as we journey. And besides, we always pick the person who agrees with us as the one that's right. So, is that really Jesus? I don't know. And what I find is that what is there is of value to me in my life and making the choices in my day. Then it doesn't matter to me what happened 2,000 years ago. And I don't know what happened. But what I do know is what matters. Is what is the choice I make today? Can I be at that place of oneness and see our connectedness? And that which I do to you, I do to me. Can I enter into that consciousness of love where separation fades away and a greater harmony comes forth? Can I enter into that place of heart where we are one? If he's helping me get there, that's my Jesus. And I can work with that. Bless you.